What exactly is the curse technique of Ryoma and Sukuna? As we are approaching the end of Gojo vs Sukuna, or we're at the end, depending on who you ask, this is the best and potentially last time to talk about what Sukuna's curse technique might actually be. And when we first start talking about Sukuna's curse technique, let's go back to the Jogo fight, because Sukuna states something pretty important here in that a cursed spirit would not know of what his curse technique is. Or to be more specific, he might just be talking directly about the black box after he says open. So this talks about either a gap in the general knowledge or just the mechanics of what Sukuna is doing here for a cursed spirit versus a human. So one of the first places I want to delve into here is what are the major differences between a sorcerer and a cursed spirit. And some obvious ones are things like them coming from negative emotions and being made of pure cursed energy and healing from cursed energy. But I want to touch on the most recent one with Gege's author's comment from 2 months ago because I think it's the most relevant, where Gege states that a cursed spirit's brain is structured differently from a human's. And this is one chapter prior to Sukuna talking about the human brain and us having the first discussions about the black box in over 100 chapters. Where Kusakabe says the human brain, especially when talking about curse techniques, is a black box, with translation notes saying this is a black box system. So what is a black box system? A black box system in computer science and elsewhere is basically taking an input or stimulus, putting it into an unknown mechanic that turns it into a known output. Or in this case, the input is your curse energy, the unknown mechanic is your brain, and the known output is your curse technique or barrier technique and things like that. But in Sukuna's case, it sounds like he knows how to open up the black box system and maybe even change things around in it to take a desired input and get a completely different output. Or in the case of his Jogo fight, he brought out flames. We know that Sukuna can pretty much copy anything he sees and the mechanics of it if it has anything to do with the fundamentals of curse energy. And if he knows how the black box system works or the engraved curse technique in your brain works, well, that means everything is the fundamentals of curse energy. Because really, what is a curse technique other than your curse energy plugged into the black box system that is your brain? So you might be wondering, okay, if that's true, how does Shrine play into this? Well, Shrine could be the mechanic he uses to open his brain in the first place. I've also seen some people say that the only technique Sukuna actually has of his own is Cleave in his Mantle. As in, this was the one he was first born with before he had anything else like other people's curse energy through eating them or something of that type. Usually when Shrine is brought up, it's brought up in relation to his slashing attacks, and that seems to be what everybody still thinks it is. And everything else might just be related to his ability to manipulate curse energy, the black box system in his head, and use the mimicry that he's already showcased to a further extent. And something interesting to me is that Kenjaku says Yuta is nothing special with the ability to copy curse techniques, have boundless curse energy, all due to retaining his loved one's soul. And if this is what Sukuna can do, well, it's probably because he's already seen Sukuna be able to do it better. But before we get into other ideas, because this is obviously not the only option for Sukuna's curse technique, let's talk about what the potential drawbacks of this would be. And the first one that comes to mind is that messing with your brain in any way in JJK is usually treated as a pretty dangerous thing to do, especially when your brain explodes at your nose. Well, using this, it could be extremely fatiguing for him, and that also lines up with the fact that he knows he's going to get jumped by the students after, so if he's just left on the ground drooling like an animal after, well, there you go. Now, another thing is people wonder about his tattoos all the time. Something interesting about Sukuna's tattoos is they're very reminiscent of tattoos for prisoners in the Edo period. And while this did happen hundreds of years after Sukuna was turned to chicken fingers, JJK's history and influences are not a one-to-one for our real-world history, because last time I checked, cursed energy and cursed techniques aren't real. So Sukuna's tattoos, for all we know, they could be unrelated to his curse technique and simply there to mark what he did to get the status of the Fallen. Or they could be there to mark his status as somebody who broke a binding vow. There's a lot of possible reasons because we really just don't get a lot of explanation on what these are to begin with. One of the popular theories is that they are an external storage device for either his curse techniques or curse tools, since the forehead tattoo does look similar to the Trishula, which is the giant trident he uses in his original form. The technique shrine itself could be more than Cleave in his Mantle. It could have these multiple weapons that are stored in some type of storage device that is pretty much only available to the shrine user. That's what a lot of people thought it was for a while, and I've also leaned on that before, but I am curious now with these black box comments how that would play into this entire statement. Because them bringing up the black box and giving further explanation to it in the middle of the Gojo versus Sukuna fight when we know the Sukuna curse technique is going to be a factor eventually, that is either foreshadowing for way down the road and Gege is just giving us tidbits now, or it's going to come up in this fight. Because with the position that Gojo is in right now, Sukuna either has something else cooking up, or Gojo is going to win next chapter, and the students do not have to get involved.
You got good guys right here, man.
Oh my god, my guys suck balls, you know it. Especially this motherfucker right here.
If I suck balls, you are king of suck balls mountain.
Shut the fuck up.
And I ran a community poll on this the other day, and of the people who voted, all 11,000, which is a lot of people to vote on a community poll for me, and the majority of you voted that he's not going to die next chapter, so I really think that the scent of bullshit is on the wins. And I want to talk about the story for a bit here, in that Sukuna, he's kind of been downplaying Gojo this whole fight, at least from the beginning. I know Gojo said, "You're the challenger here," which is kind of a bit of a jab. And Sukuna, he's been damn stubborn about Gojo just being this ordinary dude, or just some brat that he doesn't have to worry about. And whether it's just pride, or he's been actively lying to himself, the thing with Sukuna here is that he has not acknowledged Gojo as the strongest person he has ever fought. He's been sitting here fighting Gojo, the characters in the background, they bring up the fact that Sukuna is going to have to fight all the students after this is done, so he can't go all out against Gojo. They say as long as the students are here, Sukuna has to hold back, and Gojo can go all out with no burden. However you personally want to take this statement, that's not really the point here. The point is that Gege Akatame is bringing it up in the first place, and not only bringing it up, but bringing it up a chapter before Mahoraga got destroyed and Sukuna's about to die. Sukuna's CT has been intentionally hidden the entire series, and now they're bringing up a trump card one chapter before Sukuna is unable to do a lick of damage or even live. Those are some pretty big red flags that we're going to see some major power reveals from this guy next week. How substantial that's actually going to be, well, we're probably going to find out next chapter. And something interesting we learned last chapter is when Gojo blew himself up with the Hollow Purple, and he said the damage was lessened for him because he was being hit with his own cursed energy. And that may become very important down the road, because you know who is soaked with Sukuna's cursed energy? Yuji Itadori. And if they save Megumi, which I really think they will, he will also be soaked in Sukuna's cursed energy. And if it works in any way similar to Gojo's own cursed energy being weaker on him with his attacks, well then Sukuna's attacks should in theory be weaker on them. Because at one point, both these guys will have been quote-unquote Sukuna. And it seems like the general consensus is that the 10 Shadows technique, it is done for Sukuna for the rest of this fight. And while there may be some big plot twists with the 10 Shadows and Sukuna in this fight, I think that most of the things that were set up with 10 Shadows here are going to be used for Megumi later. Something doesn't sit right for me with Sukuna unlocking the full power of the 10 Shadows, because it is Megumi's technique, and he's not just some supporting character, he is a deuteragonist. Because things like the totality of Mahoraga, Chimera Shadow Garden, all 10 Shadows being used in unison, that seems like something that's left for Megumi. And after all is said and done, if Gojo is dead for whatever reason and Sukuna is alive, Yuji and Megumi would have every reason on Earth to want to kill this guy. Sukuna has used both of their bodies to commit some pretty terrible things, so Yuji and Megumi, they have a shared trauma after this fight if Megumi becomes free. But that's just my opinion. We're probably gonna get the answer next week, because this is one of the most anticipated chapters I've ever seen in JJK, or at the very least the most hyped chapter since that 2-week break between 213 and 214, because people really wanted to see Yuji beat Sukuna's ass. And if you like content like this, subscribe for more. And as always, thanks for watching.